Hello everybody, and welcome to the What's the Quack podcast. I'm your host, Ducky. You lot liked the sexy voice intro last time, that's on you. You're getting it every time now. Hello everybody, welcome to the show, and joining me today is a very special guest, longtime friend of mine, qualified teacher, but more importantly, a practicing magician, and a thumping good one, I might add. It's my friend Dara. Say hello, Dara.
Hello, you just reminded me of of Hagrid from Harry Potter. A thumping good one.
I really wanted to like introduce you as a wizard. I really did.
You're a wizard, Harry. I'm a what? A wizard, and a thumping good one, I'd wager. So now everybody can just vomit from how terrible that impression was, but there you go. Yeah. Not surprisingly, the magician guest on the podcast is a fan of Harry Potter. Please don't hate me.
With a couple of Lord of the Rings references, we'll try to get them in as well. A bit of sorcery. But yeah, so my audience is sitting here listening and they haven't a fucking clue who you were. So, Dara, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself and what you're doing?
I am inevitable. So my name is Dara, and as you said, I'm a teacher, but a magician. So obviously my full-time job is one of an educator, but like you, my goal with YouTube is to not actually escape teaching. I know retail was very different, but for you and your experience, but I actually planned on becoming a teacher. I went to university and did all of the necessary in order to become an actual educator. Unfortunately, I ended up having to move to the UK to get a bloody job in the thing. That's a conversation for another day, perhaps. But anyway, my end goal is probably, I think, to reduce to part-time ultimately. I don't think I'd ever like to leave teaching because I actually love my job. I just don't love it enough that I want to do it 5 days a week, you know.
It's a lot, to be fair.
It is. The work-life balance is one of the most important things to me. And if I'm being very honest, and I know, again, some people are going to vomit when they hear this because everybody hears about all the holidays teachers get and all of the time off and so on. But what people don't see behind the scenes is the amount of work teachers do at home when they are actually off. But, you know, that acknowledged, my goal is, I think, ultimately for the YouTube channel to grow with your help, Ducky, and thank you very much for having me on for that reason. But yeah, I guess I started doing magic when I was about 5 years of age. I got a magic set from Father Christmas, aka Santa Claus, and I've been doing it ever since. That happened when I was 5 years of age. I'm 29 now, so yeah, I've been doing magic for approximately 25 years. I remember when I was a kid and I first got a magic set and I was doing tricks for my parents and adults and sometimes my friends. My friends were fooled by them because they were idiot kids like I was. But adults would always see through it because when you're a kid, you're not good at anything, let alone magic. Good at shitting and eating, maybe, but not
sticking a crayon up your own arse. I excelled in that class, lad.
Did you?
I did. Above and beyond.
I can't say I ever stuck a crayon into my body, but I'm sure there's a lot of crayon aficionados in your audience who'll have sympathy for that talking point, Ducky.
Yeah. The old Crayola fan club.
I'm never ever going to see a Crayola crayon again and not think of your arsehole. Thanks for that.
Have you never gotten a Crayola prostate massage?
I haven't, Ducky.
You're missing out. If nothing else, it gives a good use for the infamous white crayon that nobody ever uses.
I heard it's a very colourful experience. Yeah, sorry, the puns are going to be awful. Forgive me. That was a real dad joke.
Wax about this all day.
Oh my God! Right, where was I? Good grief, Ducky! Don't you dare interrupt me ever again.
Do you know who I am?
I'm not. But yeah, so I must admit, when I was doing tricks for adults when I was a kid, you know, they had that, what you'd expect, that kind of patronizing tone. They were like, "Oh my God, you're such a good boy. Well done. That's amazing. How long did it take you to learn that?" Obviously, they could see through the trick and they were not very impressed, other than, you know, the cuteness of a kid showing them a trick. They weren't fooled. But then there came a point, not very long after I started at my dad, you know, I started when I was 5, maybe when I reached about 6 or 7, I started doing tricks that actually fooled adults. And then what was hilarious was that tone of voice completely vanished. So I'd show a trick to someone, a coin would vanish and it would just actually be gone and they didn't know where it was. And they go, "Hang on a fucking second now, where did that go? Where's the fucking, Dara, where's the fucking coin gone?" You know, it's like they almost became angry.
At least with me, they knew where the coin went.
You put it in your prison wallet.
Yeah.
But that's where you store all of your valuables, isn't it, Ducky?
Absolutely, yeah.
That's fantastic. So that change in tonality was addictive. So as soon as I realised that I was onto something and I was able to, quote, fool people, the hook was in, and here I am, as I said, 25 years later as a 29-year-old, and I'm deeper in the magic scene than I've ever been, really. I adore it. I love it. And, in school as well, I wasn't an athletic child. You and PJ, shout out to PJ, by the way, you and PJ have spoken about this, I think, on this very podcast. Correct me if I'm wrong. You spoke about the kind of the GAA supremacy that we all experienced in school. If you played hurling, you were a god among humans.
Yeah, you were looked upon very favourably.
Yeah, exactly. If you weren't an athletic kid, teachers... Now, I won't say this is true of all my teachers, because I'm actually, generally speaking, I think I had a good education growing up, and I think people tried their best given the circumstances, but there definitely were those teachers who gave you the cold shoulder if you weren't athletic or if you weren't interested in sports, and I certainly wasn't. But anyway, I digress. Being able to get one over on the popular kids, I always had that X factor, and growing up being able to do that, being able to make people, I mean, what other art form is there that makes people freak out, like actually freak out, like think that reality is breaking in front of their eyes? The laws of physics have been suspended, and it's just amazing. And so, yeah, it's incredibly addictive. If any of you are interested in becoming a magician, the very first time you do a trick and you blow somebody's mind, that feeling you get, that doesn't go away, that doesn't dull. It becomes like your very own heroin. Oh yeah, give it to me.
Oh, well, it's the same with most kind of things with entertainment. That is the drug itself, making people feel a particular way. Like for me, I love to make people laugh. For you, like to amaze and astound. I don't want to be using the cliche, the magician cliche, but I will say, because I think I actually forgot to mention at the start, it's fairly evident now, but Dara has a YouTube channel where he you perform magic tricks. Do you show how to do some of them?
I do show how some magic tricks are done, yeah. The dividing line there is whether or not the magic trick is public domain or not. Of course, it wouldn't be appropriate for me to reveal the secrets behind magic effects that are supposed to be purchased from the intellectual property.
That was actually something, because I've actually spoken to you about this before, and I found it really interesting, and maybe the old Duck Army might find it a bit interesting as well. The idea of tricks being copyrighted, public domain, and needing to be purchased, that fascinated me, because I just assumed there was an open market, do what you want kind of thing.
Well, no, I mean, plagiarism is a problem. I'm not saying it's a problem in the magic community specifically. I'm saying, just generally speaking, plagiarism is an ugly thing. And, if I take, let's say, magician X spends, I don't know, and in some cases it could be this long, sometimes longer, it spends 5 years developing a new magic effect with a novel method that nobody has ever thought of before. They invest much of their time and their effort into that item, and then they market it and they sell it as a product. And if you're not aware, there's a massive magic industry where you can purchase magic books, magic tricks, and so on and so forth. It's a hobby that could burn a hole in your pocket rather quickly, because these things aren't cheap. But let's say this magician markets the item that they've invented for £20, dollars, euros, whatever, right? And then I come along, I purchase said effect, and then I go onto my YouTube channel and I expose how it's done. Well, what I've actually done there is given it away for free, and I'm not entitled to do that. And you can get in trouble for doing things like that. Now, there is a real grey area, make no mistake. I've seen it happen where people have given away how certain tricks are done when it wasn't their own intellectual property and there was no punishment. But I've also seen it go the other way. But forget about the law for a moment. The law could be right and it could be wrong. That's a mistake people make all the time. If you forgive me for being philosophical for a moment, people assume that the law is a synonym for what's right and what's wrong. But there are plenty of laws that I find objectionable, and there are plenty of laws that I would change. I mean, it used to be the law that you could own slaves. Morality and the law are separate enterprises, and in my view, whether or not it's legal to take somebody else's intellectual property, it is absolutely immoral. It's abhorrent, and I won't do it for that reason. I perform other magicians' magic tricks, but I would never reveal them. If you watch my YouTube channel, I've got a series of videos called Dara's Magic School, and in that series of videos, and more upcoming I might add, I reveal how certain tricks are done, but those tricks are public domain. They're not tricks that are owned by any one individual, because magic is an ancient ancient art form. You can see Egyptian hieroglyphs of pharaohs being shown the cups and balls, which is a classic of magic. I mean, it goes back thousands of years. And so I'm not a big fan of revealing other people's work. It would be the equivalent, Ducky, of somebody taking your joke and using it on their channel without crediting you.
Yeah. But see, that was the thing that I found fascinating, is because just as a common Joe Soap, like as a Joe Nobody, I never thought about magic that deep or in that way, to the point where I was like, I could consider tricks being plagiarized or stolen or, exposed. I just, as a normal person, you never think about that side of things. You just see the magic and you just like, it's like a show, it's like a theatre, that kind of way. You never think about the admin behind it. So when I was talking to you before about that, about how some tricks are like public domain, some you have to purchase the rights to be able to not show it, but perform it and stuff like that. I thought that was, in itself, was fascinating, because there's like a whole inner kind of rules and regulations among that.
Well, I mean, it's not even an internal rule system. It's very much based on the laws that govern everything. Plagiarism, you can be brought to court and sued for stealing other people's intellectual property. And there is red tape, and it can go both ways. I don't know how interesting this is for your listeners, so perhaps I'll finish on this thought. But I remember buying a magic effect once with the plan of making a YouTube video surrounding it. But when I opened the item, mind you, this wasn't made very clear in the ad copy, but it was after I purchased it for a rather extravagant fee, I might add, that there was a little slip of paper included in the product. When I opened it, it said, this item and the purchasing of it does not include the right to perform it on video in any form, be it TV,
commercial
social
use.
media. Yeah, so you could only essentially show it to people in private gatherings. And so that made it absolutely superfluous for my purposes. And I was rather frustrated by that, because then I couldn't use it. But look, I was frustrated, but I try to be a moral and law-abiding citizen, and so I haven't ever made that video, and I won't.
Well, that's fair enough.
But you did say something, Ducky, that struck me. I made note of it here so that I didn't forget. But you said, like I spoke about how I adore the reaction that I get from an audience when they're amazed by a particular effect, and you said that the corollary, no doubt for you, is when an audience laughs at something, because that's your end goal. My end goal is to create what I would call, and I'm quoting a very influential magician, his name is Paul Harris, written many books, produced many products, and he's incredible. If anybody wants to look up Paul Harris, he's absolutely amazing. But in any case, Paul Harris describes that moment where people are amazed. He calls it a moment of astonishment, and that's what a magician is chasing. The magician wants their audience to experience a moment of astonishment. And a comedian, of course, which I hope you don't mind me using that label.
Yeah, it's accurate.
Yeah, for sure. There's a couple of other labels, pervert maybe, but maybe.
Hornball. Dirty rotten bastard.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Ducky's podcast.
It's grand being a pervert at this age, but age will defeat me, where I'll just become a weird old man. When you're young and somewhat attractive, it's endearing. It is self-attractive, being a dirty fucker. But
I don't know. I think it depends on who you're doing it to, Ducky. It might not seem so endearing to the person who's not appreciating your sexual advance. Hashtag me too.
we got a few women in the audience, so I'll present this question to them. How would you feel, and I can only assume completely aroused, if I walked up, grabbed you by the back of the head, just lightly rubbing my fingers behind your ear and said, "I'm going to shove a Crayola up your arse."
For the record, I do not condone what Ducky just said. Oh my God. This is
It's okay. You're squeaky clean. I'm not.
Yeah, but unfortunately, there's this ugly thing in the world today, Ducky. It's called guilt by association.
But actually, I was just going to say that's almost a perfect segue. Do you want to finish your point? And I'll.
Yeah. I was going to say, because what intrigues me, Ducky, is that your comedy takes place in a format where you don't actually hear the audience's laughter. So I wanted to ask you about that, because you don't perform live. Whereas in my, say, Dara's Street Deceptions videos, you can see me interacting with real people on the street, and you can see that moment of astonishment in their eyes and in their reaction. And that for me is extremely fulfilling. I just wanted to, forgive me if it's a depressing question, but my sense is that because you don't hear that laughter yourself, because your video goes out onto a social media platform and people laugh in the privacy of their homes or wherever they might be.
Yeah.
You know, how does that feel as a content creator? Is that a lonely experience, or how? I don't know. I'm just intrigued. How does that feel as a content creator?
Well, a lot of it is communicated through comments on a video. So,
I see.
So like, if I had like a very particularly good video that people enjoyed, you know, the vast majority of the comments would be, "Oh my God, that's so fucking funny," or "I laughed my ass off when I was watching this. This is fantastic." You get a lot of the validation from that satiates to the, you know, the kind of the ego being stroked, or the kind of validation you want from it. But I have actually watched videos with my fans back when I had a Discord, it was about 20, 30 of us in one call. And,
oh, wow. That's brilliant.
And I've premiered a video to them. And, you know, that was fantastic, just seeing where people are laughing. You know, obviously you want them laughing in the right points and stuff like that. That's enjoyable. But I see that as extra. As long as my channel is growing, people are enjoying what I'm putting out, deciding to jump on this train of mine, or being vocal about it, then that's the thrill for me.
That's fantastic. And if you don't mind me following up, I know this is starting to sound like the Isdara podcast and I'm interviewing you, but I have
they're sick of listening to me, lad. They're only happy to have new people on. I won't shut the fuck up, you see. Every time they come onto this channel, it's just me talking all the time.
It's okay, everyone. I'm here and I'm going to save the day. No, I wanted to ask, do you ever see yourself, I mean, obviously in a post-coronavirus world, fingers crossed, if this vaccine works out and all the rest of it, do you ever see yourself transitioning to live comedy?
I've definitely mentally played with the idea before. The bit that I would find appealing about live comedy, if it was like stand-up or something similar, the bit about that is... The thing I'd like with that is that obviously the live reaction, people laughing, cheering along or whatever else, but there's more cons for me involved in that. When I'm like recording a video or telling a joke, I have an awful habit of tripping over myself or mispronouncing words and stuff like that. So I think I definitely suffer. I was in a live event. And as well as that, I would find that unbelievably intimidating if I was actually in the same room with everybody else. Because you know,
that's very interesting.
You know me, because I'm an introvert. I tend to stay inside and I don't like large gatherings and stuff like that. So I would probably, I feel like I would buckle under that. And to a degree, I'm finding a lot of success in what I'm doing now. And if I was to start doing stand-up comedy from where I am and the kind of the financial security that I have now, if I pursued that, it would almost be like a step backwards.
You see, I find that utterly fascinating, the kind of this duality of an artist. And guys, you know, I don't think it's... I'm just going to piggyback on what you said, Ducky. Ducky does tend to be an introverted human being. I find it very interesting when I watch your videos, Ducky. This other person is talking. It's not the Ducky I know personally. You know what I mean? Don't get me wrong, your personality shines through and there's elements of you there. But there is, to a certain extent, if you don't mind my saying so, you're playing a character to a certain extent.
See, if I say I'm playing a character, that runs the risk of I don't mean what I say, you know, that kind of stuff. But,
no,
but
I
what
don't
I will
mean
say
that.
is the person who's addressing an audience, that kind of extroverted, that seems like extroverted behavior that would counter what I am.
And that's all I mean.
Yeah.
And that's all I mean. I'm not inferring anything additional other than that. It's just that duality is absolutely fascinating to me, that this person, Ducky, who has a channel that's incredibly successful, a massive audience, you for a living speak to 130,000 people a week or a month or whatever the case may be. For a living, you are doing one of the most social, one of the most out there things that a person can do, and yet in your private life, as you said, you're more of an introvert. And I that duality absolutely fascinates me. For me, it's what you see is very much who I am. Now, I'm sure you'll agree with me when you say, when you see me performing, you know that there's a little bit of extra kind of a sheen on how I'm presenting myself.
There's a showmanship to it.
Yeah. I don't enunciate and perform in private that way. I don't arrive to your house and say, "Hello, Ducky." You know, it's not, I don't...
It's that Mark Hamill.
That actually did sound a bit like Mark Hamill Joker. But yeah, I just think that's interesting because, you know, because you don't do that live element, that you would be more introverted in private, despite the size and the enormity of your audience. Anyway, yeah, that's just a fascinating psychological point.
Believe it or not, I don't feel like when I'm sitting down recording and stuff, obviously there's a bit of nerves and stuff because you are putting yourself out there, but I find it quite intimate when I'm sitting down and I'm recording, I'm talking to my audience. I don't feel like I'm talking to a load of strangers. These are like people I know, you know, these are people who've already established they're enjoying my content. Like when I was addressing people at the very beginning on my channel, that was quite intimidating because you are putting yourself out there for the world to see. You're laying bare for the world to judge. But now that I have an audience behind me, I'm putting this video out to all my mates. these are people I know. It doesn't feel as it doesn't feel like that kind of social pressure is there. So when I'm recording a video nowadays, or I'm doing these podcasts, and I don't know that thousands of people are listening, it doesn't bother me, because these are thousands of people I know now who know me, and they've already made up their minds about me. There's no judgment involved in that, and other kind of characteristics that most introverts would frighten away from. I
think that speaks to your success, though, because you do treat your audience like they're your best friends, and for all intents and purposes, they are just a very large group of best friends who convene frequently and communicate with you through this wonderful thing we call the internet and social media. And I just think, I think that speaks to your success. What you've done quite successfully, in my view, is create a sense of community. You're not talking into a megaphone and expecting 130,000 people to listen. What you're doing is engaging in a dialogue with 130,000 people. Yeah, like when I'm telling a story, I feel like I'm sitting in a room talking to one of the lads or one of my friends. I'm not addressing an audience. That's kind of what it feels like to me. I'm just sitting there having a chat with somebody over a cup of tea, That's amazing. And, I've experienced that kindness myself. I mean, your fans or your mates, however you want to refer to them, they've welcomed me with open arms. Yeah, like I mentioned before this podcast began, like I have the best fans in the world. They're so welcoming, so fucking greatest guys in the world. Like I have a fantastic community that has shown me nothing but support, and it's almost, they treat me like a mate. Like they're happy to support me in everything I do, and they're just genuine people. Well, I felt that kindness because they've welcomed me in the same way, and again, at the end of the day, I'm just a stranger to them. But anyway, it's just wonderful. It really is. It's great to see that you have such a maybe fan base is not even the right phrase, but just a wonderful group of supporters and friends at the end of the day. That's amazing. Yeah. Now we better not speak of them too nicely. They'll start to think I'm a nice person. We can't be having that. Yeah, we just as soon as the mic keeps recording, even though we think we've stopped, and it's like fucking wankers. Just trying to satisfy them every month with amazing videos. Fuck them. Oh, I'm feeling soft. I'm feeling vulnerable. Quick, get me an orphan to punch or something. Oh. But what the point I want to get back on there with the magic scene is, you're the stranger here. We want to hear what you have to say. You're the magician. You're the one that's interesting right now. With magic, you were talking about how you use it in school, and you use that to become like or to kind of outwit the smart kids or the popular kids and become notable yourself. Obviously, that'd translate into perhaps chatting up women. Yeah, well, I've been witness to it, but I'm going to feign ignorance here just so you can talk about it. How effective is knowing magic tricks and being quite a good magician? How effective is that at garnering interest from the opposite sex? Very. It's very effective. I remember speaking with PJ, who's a mutual friend of ours, one time, and we were talking. I can't remember what this study was, or social experiment or something, so you'll have to forgive me because I've forgotten the details. But the take home of this particular social experiment was a guy walked into a bar wearing snorkeling headgear, like as if he was going to go diving, if that makes sense. Yeah. He walked in with that on his head, and he just stood at the bar. And within 20 minutes, half an hour, more than one woman had approached him to ask him, "What are you doing?" And then that was the start of a conversation. They came to him, and then he managed to procure numbers, and the rest is history. And it kind of, the psychological principle that they were exploring, I guess, I mean, to state the obvious, if you stand out, if you're different, people notice you. And that's half the battle, I think. Yeah, I think it's called peacocking. Sure, yeah. Kind of, you have an interesting quirk about you that draws in people. Yeah, and peacocking can take many forms, and magic, obviously, is a pretty obvious form. I'm not going to lie, I don't wish this to sound crude, but essentially 99% of the women I've gotten with because of magic, because of a conversation that was started up due to a trick that I did. I remember one time in my hometown in Ireland, the nightclub scene in my small town in Ireland was essentially non-existent, but I was in a bar one night, and the average Irish bar has a cobbled together dance floor. It's the place where obviously the pool table is during the day, but they kind of shove it aside in the night time so that young people can jump around and be idiots and vomit everywhere. But anyway, I was on the dance floor, and I did a trick, which is actually on my channel if people are interested in checking it out. It's one of my earlier videos, so you'll have to excuse the quality. Please remember, I was coming from humble beginnings. It was a while until Ducky educated me on how to do YouTube properly. But in that video, I believe is called Easy Money. And it does what it says on the tin. I take 4 or 5 blank pieces of paper and I click my fingers and they very instantly and visually turn into money, right? But I was on the dance floor and I saw this girl who I thought was absolutely smoking. She was like, there I am, dating myself by using the word smoking.
Some sugar on me.
But she was gorgeous, and I tell you, I was so bold. I walked up to her on the dance floor, no less. So everybody's jumping around the dance floor, and I make eye contact with her, and I point downwards, and she's like, "Oh God, what's he pointing at?" But she looks down and she sees that I've got something in my hand. And again, for the listeners, they're like, "Please, Magic Dara, tell us what's in your hand." I feel
like if I was telling this story, it would have gone very differently.
It would have gone very differently, Ducky, if you were involved. Yes. In fact, you might not be here right now and might be imprisoned if you'd done what you're thinking. But I had 5 blank pieces of paper in my hand. I spread those blank pieces of paper in front of her, showed them both sides, and she's looking at me going, "What the fuck is this guy doing?" And then I click my fingers and they all turn into 20s. And her jaw dropped to the floor. And I shit you not, this is a true story. This girl, upon seeing the paper change into money, took me by the hand, led me off the dance floor to the smoking area, got to the smoking area without saying one word to me, lit a ciggy, took a drag out of the cigarette, and then locked lips with me, just because I turned paper into money.
Saucy minx.
We hadn't even spoken a word, and obviously the listeners can fill in the blanks, but yeah, that girl came home with me that
So
night.
like you did a magic trick and she pretty much went, "Get inside my vagina now, you magical man."
Essentially, if you want to look at it that way, that's what happened. And don't get me wrong, not every experience, I'm not telling you guys right now, if you go and learn a paper into money trick, that people are just going to want to take you home. Obviously, this, as you said, this particular girl was very saucy indeed. But that's generally been, not to that extent, but that's generally been my experience of showing magic to the opposite sex. They become instantly intrigued. And I've got a whole bunch of stories like that where women became interested simply because I showed them a magic trick. Actually, I back up one moment and just say that my intention very often when I've shown people magic hasn't been to procure a mate. That particular night it was, which is why I told that story. But there have been many other scenarios where my intentions were simply just, I want to practice a trick because I want to get better, and I was showing it to a group of people. And then lo and behold, one of the females in that group advances interest. And it happens that way too. But what's beautiful about it, Ducky, is they perceive it as confidence, but all I'm doing is actually reciting what I would call my patter, Patter, magician's patter. It's essentially it's a synonym for script. Every trick I do, I have a script that goes along with it, and the script more or less stays the same. I do it kind of bluesy. If somebody is joking with me, I'll, just like this conversation, we're going to come up with jokes on the fly and things like that. But they, it seems to me, interpret that patter as you being confident in talking to them. But all I'm actually doing is repeating lines that I've said 100 times before, but that's still me talking to them.
Yeah.
And they see that as confidence, they interpret that as confidence, and ultimately it can lead to them being interested in you, going all the way back to that psychological principle, that kind of peacocking effect. But yeah, I'm not kidding when I say that the vast majority of women I've gotten with as a consequence of that kind of peacocking moment where magic made me stand out from the crowd.
Yeah, that's just, even when you're saying that now, just thinking about that, it really does make a lot of sense, because I've said it before, one thing women really are drawn to is a confident man. You know, whether you like it or not, that's just an attractive trait for a lot of women. If you're just reading from a mental script or performance, like a mental act that you've done 100 times before, you're not thinking about how confident you seem in that moment, because you're just doing the thing that you've trained to do. Take my own videos. These are stories I was able to pluck out of my head and write them down and trim the fat and, dress them up a bit. If I told a story in real life, word for word, how I do in a video, where it's all scripted, rehearsed, all the punchlines are there, people will think I am the most interesting man in the world, because I'm just kind of drawing from a script. Yeah, just taking that principle, just reading from a script, approaching women. I always thought maybe it was the magic that they kind of, I'm sure it has a part to play, the
Sure.
amazing and is down a bit, but I never actually thought about just the confidence in which you deliver.
And again, I mean, I'm not a psychological professional. I mean, I don't have any degrees in psychology. I don't have any expertise at all in that domain. And as far as I'm aware, you don't either. I'm just giving you my layman's interpretation of what I think happened. And in my view, that is what happened. It's that script. It's that ability to talk in a flow without tripping over your words. Because, and you know, what's funny, what's ironic, is that if you ask me just to have a conversation with a woman that I think is beautiful without my magic present, I become like that same old nerd I was when I was 14 in school.
You regress to a teenager. Yeah, I'm just as bad.
Yeah, I trip over myself. I don't know what to say. I'm like, oh, did I say the wrong thing? Oh, I'm so nervous. But give me a deck of cards and I will become Mr. Charisma. I become Mr. Showman, and it looks as though I am just at complete ease talking with a person.
I would say I'd absolutely identify that. It's like if you told me, if I was a single man right now and you told me go up and have an interesting conversation with that girl, I'd be like, I don't know what the fuck to say. But if you told me go over there and make that girl laugh, I'd be like, okay.
Yeah, there's a mechanical goal. It's like you're doing something. It's kind of a functionalist approach. You are going to go over here and do this thing that you've rehearsed. It's almost like an actor with a script. It's rehearsed, it's learned, and so there's no you don't trip over yourself.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
There's less falling off the horse, so to speak. There's less of an issue there.
Sure. And on that note, if any of your listeners are interested in learning a simple trick, again, forgive the shameless plug here, but if you're interested in learning a simple trick, I have a series of videos. I think it's about 6 or 7 videos in right now, called Dara's Magic School, and I teach a number of very simple basic tricks. But be aware, when I say simple, it doesn't mean the end result or the reaction will be simple. The method is simple, but the effect is actually quite powerful, and that duality in magic is often the case. Sometimes the simplest tricks get the most powerful of reactions. One of my very first Magic School videos was called How to Read Minds. If you watch that video, there's a very simple card trick. If you have a deck of cards in your pocket, and this is how the trick plays out. The deck is placed on the table. The spectator cuts the cards after shuffling them themselves, I might add. They cut the cards wherever they want. They look at that card and remember it. Then they shuffle it back into the deck themselves, and then they place the deck in their pocket. You never touch the cards once, and then you tell them what card they're thinking of. Now, if that sounds impossible to you, it's because you're not educated on the subject of magic. The method is so devilishly simple. And if you watch that video, that's a trick that you could use to do exactly what we're talking about right now. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not recommending that a whole new generation of magicians go out there with the one central goal of pulling women. I would rather people got interested in magic and appreciated it for the beautiful art form that I believe it to be. But there's no denying that magic can serve other purposes, such as easing social situations for yourself, and ultimately and potentially getting the interest of the opposite sex or the same sex. I don't want to assume the sexuality of any viewer. It's very, very useful, I must say. What's great though is that I've also done it to help friends. So I've got a great little story for you.
Bit of a wingman, is it? That kind of thing?
Yes. Well, I mean, the short answer is I've been in a relationship now. I'm engaged, in fact, to my fiance Becky. So shout out to Becky.
Hello, Becky.
Becky, she's in the Magic School videos, by the way. She helps me out.
Your lovely assistant.
She is, yeah, and lovely she is. I'm punching well above my weight. I know that.
And as somebody who knows you very well, that's definitely true.
But so she's in the Magic School videos. But I've lost my train of thought. What was I going to say? Where was I going with that, Ducky?
Wingman.
Oh yes, wingman. Yeah. So I've helped others with my magic as well. I'm not trying to pretend I'm the Dalai Lama or something. When I do magic now, it's to entertain. It's because I actually love the art form itself. But even though I am engaged now and I'm not in that whole chasing women world, like you, Ducky, you and Connie and so on, or at least nothing that we're going to admit to on air.
Yeah, you'll have both of our missuses after this kind of going, what was that supposed to be? What was meant by that? What nefarious shit have you been getting up to on the quiet, you bastards?
You know what? I hope that happens. But anyway, for you, I mean, I hope it doesn't happen for me, obviously. A friend that shall remain nameless, I was out with one night, and he was interested in pulling a bird. I said, I'll help you. And he said, how? What are you going to do? I said, just remember this card, the Queen of Hearts. Just remember that. That's all you got to remember. Remember the Queen of Hearts. And he was like, okay. So I approached a group of girls who were chosen for their beautiful personalities. No, they weren't. I'll leave you fill in the blanks there.
For their great, big blue eyes.
For their massive contributions to humanity. So in any case, I approached this group of girls and I said, girls, I hope you don't mind me interrupting your evening. I just wanted to ask you if you'd be willing to volunteer for a moment. My friend is a magician and he's practicing his mind reading. It's a very difficult technique and he wants to show it to a nice group of people who, you know, don't make him feel too under pressure because, you know, this might go right, it might go wrong. He's just experimenting, he's just practicing. And above all else, he's just looking for a nice, receptive group of people who can give him some feedback. And they said, oh yeah, sure, tell him come over. I said, okay, I'll go get him. And so I went and got this friend. The friend introduces himself as this magician. We agreed the story beforehand. And then I took over and I said, now girls, my friend here has asked me to hold the deck of cards just to make it even more impossible for him to know what cards you're selecting. So I spread the cards and he instructs them to choose any card and they choose one randomly. They reach in and they take a random card out of the deck after verifying that all the cards are different and shuffling them themselves, right? And they remember the card and they put it back in. I say, right, that's my job done. The question is now, can he read your mind? So just try and be open-minded, girls. He may or may not get it. My friend, to his credit, just enters this Zen zone, proper, committed performance, puts his fingers on his temples, and he goes, I'm seeing a red card. And instantly the girls' jaws begin to drop. But then they're like, no, but hang on a minute, that's only 50-50. They're red or black. It's not a big deal. And I'm seeing a heart. And they're like, oh. And then he put his hand on one of their temples and he said, look at me. Is it the Queen of Hearts? And they absolutely freak out. They freak out. And of course, using a very similar technique to what I teach in that very first Magic School video, How to Read Minds, I use a very similar technique. It's called a card force. There is the illusion that the card has been selected freely, but through some trickery, the card has been forced upon the person choosing. Yeah. And there's a million ways of doing that. This particular method that I used on the night wasn't the same one that's in the Magic School video, but they're very similar. And I won't tell all the tales, but let's just say that my friend that night went home with a smile on his face.
He got to use his magic wand.
He did. So he had one night as a magician, and that night was bookended by the rather triumphant use of his glorious wand.
How anticlimactic would have that been for her to find out that it was just one trick? It wasn't actually
How anticlimactic would it have been if they found out that I was the one who actually did the trick?
But then you could just kind of go, listen, I'm a magician. You pick that man because I wanted you to pick that man. That's just what I do. I make you pick the thing that I want you to pick.
But I love that. I love that magic can be used in that way, and that it can be used for self-promotion and to help yourself either procure a mate or advance your career, but it can also be used to help out a friend. And, you know, anybody who's in university right now or doing a job interview, a little trick can actually help as well. I mean, I've used magic in job interviews and I've used magic in university. I mean, yeah, its utility is, you know, far broader than, do you want to see a trick? You know, everybody has that uncle. Do you want to see a trick in the corner of the room? Or every bar in Ireland or around the world indeed has that person in the corner who has a shaggy old deck of cards and they show you that 21 card trick.
Yeah.
Where it's the 11th card, you know?
Yeah. Well, sure, look, even I know like one or two very simple card tricks, like, you know, it's...
For sure.
You do it to entertain. It's social vibrance, you know, liven up a situation, stuff like that. It's like telling a good joke, you know, it's these things that you can just add in here, there and everywhere that will lighten people's day or send home a point that you're trying to make, stuff like that.
Exactly.
One thing though, I would be remiss if I didn't ask, is because I'm sure everybody in the audience right now is thinking about this, given your 20 odd years of magician work, trickery.
Yeah, sure.
The question is, have you got any good stories of when a magic trick didn't go right and it failed miserably for you?
Oh, good grief. So I'm sure you can relate. I'm sure you had videos that bombed. I'm sure you've had jokes that went down like a lead balloon. Well, magic is no different. One of my worst failures And it was the most inopportune moment for it to happen. It's just typical of reality, isn't it? Reality loves to catch you with your pants around your ankles.
Yep.
You know, if you're a celebrity, of course, the time they trip over is the moment the paparazzi are watching, you know, that kind of thing. It just feels like the universe is hell-bent on making us miserable.
So what's this? You got a big crowd around, Joseph?
No, I was actually on TV.
Oh.
So I've had a number of television appearances in Ireland when I was a younger man. I was very fortunate. I must give a shout out. His name is Pat Fallon, and another magician, a mentor of mine, his name is John Bowden. John Bowden really took me under his wing and mentored me, and I'm indebted to John forever. He's an amazing magician and an amazing teacher. But Pat Fallon is one of the most prolific magicians in Ireland. He wouldn't be a frequent TV personality. I mean, he's had far more TV appearances than me, but what I mean is he's not, you know, known like David Blaine level, I suspect.
He's like well respected in the Irish magician community.
He's well respected in the international magic community. But I'm pressingly aware that the magic community doesn't include the lay public. So if you haven't heard of Pat Fallon, I'm saying, you know, that's understandable. But Pat Fallon was the one who put forward my name. RTE, Radio Television in Ireland, which is the equivalent, if anybody's listening in the UK, it's the Ireland's version of BBC, basically. They were called and asked if there's any young and upcoming magicians who would be interested in appearing on a talent program. That talent program was called Class Act. Class Act was the equivalent to your Britain's Got Talent or X Factor, that kind of thing, right? And so Pat Fallon very kindly put forward my name, and so I'm indebted to Pat Fallon as well. And so I don't know if there's any chance Pat will listen to this, but if you are, Pat, thank you very much for doing that when I was young and up and coming. But long story short, I ended up on the stage on the night. We're about to hit record. I did my warm-up, my rehearsal, all went swimmingly. Everything's in order and ready to rock. Fantastic.
All going well at this point then?
All going well at this point. Live audience, but it's been studio recorded. It's going to go out on air in the following months, right? Like most TV. 3 judges watching on the panel, live audience, and then the little red light, if anybody's been on TV, they know what I'm talking about. There's a little red light on the camera that's watching you, and so you know that the camera is active. As soon as that red light went on, oh my God, I've never felt pressure like I've had then. And you must remember, I was only 16 at the time.
Oh God.
So I was only 16. I was a young guy. I mean, I'm still a young guy, but I was a lot younger then. I was only a kid. The light goes on. All of a sudden, the script that I knew like the back of my hand vanishes from my brain. That's the first thing. But the tricks, I cobble my way through the first couple of tricks and they all go fine. But here's the problem, right? The finale of the performance, I take a little soft ball and I toss it out randomly into the audience, and a random gentleman catches it. And I ask him to name a playing card, and I'm holding a wallet in my hand. I say, name any playing card you want, and I can't remember what he names, 10 of spades, whatever it was. I reach inside the wallet and I take out 1 card and 1 card only, and it's not the card he named.
Oh God.
In front of a live audience, recording on TV, panel of 3 judges, and I turned bright red, and the audience, because I stopped the act. I said, I must apologise to each and every one of you watching, and to the judges, I have made a mistake. It's not the correct card. I don't know what to tell you. Is there any possibility we can go again? And to their credit, and I will always remember RTE for this, they said, that's fine, Dara, you reset and we'll go again.
Well, that was nice of them at least. You know, that
if it had been 2020 Britain's Got Talent, that mistake would have been broadcast to the world.
On YouTube, it would have gone viral.
It would have gotten 1 million hits in the first 24 hours, and I would have been humiliated.
But I suppose, in a sense, it's somewhat of a valuable lesson, because we've spoken about this before in our own time, about rescuing tricks. Because I've posed the same question to you. Have you had our tricks go wrong and stuff like that? And you basically explained about, you now have plan Bs and plan Cs if a trick goes awry.
Exactly. So thankfully they allowed me to do a second take, and in the second take I nailed it, and that was the take that they broadcast to the public months later, saving my ass. But yeah, I learned a lot from that. And my mother, and a big shout out to my mother, my mother is my biggest supporter. I worship the ground she walks on. I love her to bits. She's the one who brought me to all the magic conventions when I was a kid. She was the one who bought me all the the tricks, the one who sat there rather painstakingly and watched me practice while I was asking her, did you see anything? Did you see where the card went? Did you see this? Did you see the other thing? She's been there every step of the way, and to this very day, she's my biggest supporter. My mother watches every one of my uploads, and I worship the ground she walks on. If I was to spend the rest of my life paying her back for everything she's done for me, I wouldn't have gotten a tenth of the way. So a big shout out to her. But she said to me that night, and I'll never forget these words, and I'm almost actually getting a bit choked up talking about this, so I don't want to I don't want to drag the podcast down, but what she said to me that night, and I'll never forget these words for as long as I live. She said, Dara, you have no idea the strength that it took for you to admit that you made a mistake and to do it all again in front of those judges and in front of that audience. She said that you showed more character and more strength and more conviction than any performer on that stage tonight. Because I guarantee you, she said, if any one of them made the same blunder you did, they would have ran off the stage and they'd never have returned.
Yeah, I was just going to say, because you were able to kind of go, look, drop the curtain on your performance a little bit and just say, listen, I made a mistake. Would you mind if I have another go at this? There was a kind of a genuineness behind that. If that was me in that situation right there, I tell you, I would have turned inside out. My skeleton and skin would be splayed all over the stage, and what was left of my soul would be sprinting away, never to be seen again. Well,
let's just put it this way. The feeling that you just described, that's the feeling I had. But for some reason, I don't know how, I don't know where it came from, and which is why the words that my mother said to me at that time remain with me to this day. For some reason, I found the strength and the courage to just try again. I didn't win in that talent show, and understandably, to be perfectly honest, I don't think it would have been fair for me to win if I made a mistake, whereas other acts didn't. But on a side note, I became the subject of a national scandal in Ireland as a consequence of that talent show. I don't know if you're aware, but at the time there was uproar because it turned out that one of the judges, her name was Twink, who's a very influential media presence. If you don't know her, Google it. But it transpired that Twink was actually related to the girl who won.
Oh.
Yeah, and I was at the centre of a national scandal the following day. You know, the whole Joe Duffy thing.
Yeah.
Somebody called into Joe Duffy and they named me specifically. Yeah, Joe will fix it. Yeah, I don't know why they don't just send Joe into the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, or send Joe into Trump's America and sort out the division that's going on there.
Is there nothing he can't do?
But in any case, yeah, I think it was Joe Duffy, and somebody called in and they said there was a magician on that program and there was a violinist on that program and they were amazing. And this caller felt that we hadn't been given a fair shake. But to be honest, I was just happy that he didn't air my blunder. I didn't care if it was robbed from me after that. And again, this is not to intimate the idea that I would have won if it wasn't fixed. And I don't even know for sure that it was fixed. I'm just saying that there were murmurings that it might have been, and at the very least, it was inappropriate that the judge was related to the actual person who won. And that certainly casts a negative shade. But look, it's ancient history as far as I'm concerned. I was very grateful for the experience. And leading into the point that you made a moment ago, it did teach me a lesson. I do need to have a plan B. Tricks need to have fail safes. That can't happen to me anymore, because now I'm prepared. If I turn over the card and it's not the right one, I've got all sorts of ways of getting out of jail free. So if I turn over the card and I say, and there's your card, and you say, that's not mine, then I follow up with, disguised as the Jack of Hearts. And then I'm instantly the audience doesn't know that isn't the plan. You know, they don't know where you're going because they haven't seen the trick.
Yeah, and there is some magician tricks that purposely get it wrong to lull them into a false sense of security, and then they reveal it.
Yeah, you lead the spectator up the garden path and then turn on the sprinklers.
Yeah.
But so now that doesn't happen to me anymore. Now, it doesn't mean it's impossible, but it generally doesn't happen anymore. And I think that leads on to another question that I read, if you don't mind me saying, Ducky. There was one questioner asked, has anybody ever figured out how a trick was done live while I was doing it?
Yeah.
And again, this comes with experience. There are so many methods. This is something you were inferring a moment ago, I believe. There are so many methods to achieve a particular effect that as soon as I notice that somebody might be cracking on and figuring out what method is being used, I immediately switch it up and use a different method. And then all of a sudden they're completely perplexed. I had it just recently. I was showing magic to a girl. She was a very, very astute observer. I must give her credit. And she began to realise that when I was putting her card in the middle, that it had already been swapped for another card. And so she was like, obviously had dabbled in magic or something. This isn't something
one
that's
or two tricks herself before or something.
Yeah, because it's not something that somebody would intuit. She had to have had some kind of rudimentary experience at one point. So I said, okay, fair enough. And then I just used a completely different method where I physically cut the card into the middle and she could see it there. Then I clicked my fingers and it's back on the top anyway. And then she was just completely dumbfounded. She was more impressed than what she would have been if I did the other method. And so, yeah, that's what I love about magic. It's similar to comedy, Ducky, isn't it? There's a bluesy quality. You kind of know the beginning, middle and end, but how you're going to get there is kind of up to you, really.
Yeah, it's like any good story, you know. The journey can be taken in many different ways to get to the same conclusion. And
spot on.
So like you'll have your beginning, middle, and end. You have your basic structure, but you know you can do anything in between and still end up at a satisfying conclusion.
And I love that. I love that freedom. I love that. I mean, at the end of the day, you're a creator, and so am I. And creators and creative people, they really they thrive in an environment that's loose, that's malleable.
Yeah,
where spontaneity.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's probably why creatives and creative people struggle in very constrictive jobs. So for me, would be like retail, but like an artist in an office job, you know, that kind of way. That's
sure.
You have an extra layer of misery there because we like the freedom to kind of do what we want and be eccentric as we like. Allow the imagination to run wild and think of things at a different point of view. You don't get that in a regular 9 to 5. I'm sure you find a little bit of that with teaching. I'd imagine that's some bit of that may feel a bit like admin.
No, you're spot on. There's no question that happens. But that's what's weird about teaching. There's a kind of a middle ground there. What's really nice about teaching is that when I close that classroom door, I know what my beginning, middle and end of the lesson is going to be. I call it teaching live. I plan it ahead what my beginning, middle and end is going to be, what activity is going to be the focus of the particular lesson, but there's a bluesy quality to how we get to each section. And I love that. Because a student could ask a question that leads down a very meaningful path that gets us to a place where everybody can understand the topic a little bit better. And I do that quite frequently as a teacher. I'm sure if any of my students actually heard this podcast, they'd say the same, that Manny was the day where we went down a rabbit hole with Mr. McGrath. So yeah, it's fun. But on the note of my job, I must say I feel incredibly lucky. I mean, the stability that job has offered me with coronavirus and just having a stable income, despite the fact that I was teaching from home and setting lessons from home and so on, I'm incredibly grateful to have the career I do. And I don't ever plan on leaving it. I love teaching, but I would like to reduce to part-time ultimately at some point and have YouTube on the side. That would be nice.
But I was just going to say, at least with the YouTube, because I'd imagine like the need for magicians has somewhat deteriorated since COVID came in. So I feel like I bet you feel like having a YouTube channel is a good outlet to keep yourself sharp and fresh.
Oh, it's amazing. It's amazing because obviously, and what you're inferring there is, live performances are out the window.
Yeah.
That's not happening now, and YouTube is a fantastic format. And you know what? As much as I love live performance, I can really see myself doing YouTube full time in the future rather than live performances because it's just such a wonderful medium. It's such a wonderful place.
It is, and even just from the other side of things, like you know, speaking as somebody who's somewhat of a success as a YouTuber, it's a comfortable life. It really is. Like you spend.
Oh, absolutely.
You're on and off the clock whenever you so choose. You're doing stuff that you know you've wanted to do yourself. You're not being told to do it by anybody else. There's decent money in it once you find a footing. It's a good life. I'll never shit on that. You know, it definitely has its ups and downs, but yeah, it's you know, life as a YouTuber it's better than an awful lot of jobs.
That's for sure. I think there's nothing worse than listening to the YouTube brigade. There are certain members of the YouTube community that they don't seem to appreciate how lucky they are. I shouldn't use the word lucky, actually. That's the wrong word, because they have obviously worked very hard to get to the place they are. But what I'm saying is, I guess it seems to me, for some of them at least, that there's a lack of appreciation now that they're there. They've almost forgotten what it's like to do the 9 to 5 grind.
Yeah, but see, here's the thing though, because we'll say the vast majority of YouTube personalities tend to be a bit on the younger side. A lot of these creators have never worked hard jobs in their entire life, so
That's such a great point. You're spot on.
And because of that, a lot of them do come across and are very ungrateful for what they have.
Yeah. They don't have that life experience, Ducky. I know for a fact, and I've been good friends with you for many, many years. I know how badly retail affected you. I remember days where I met you and I was worried about you, frankly, because it was eating your soul, basically.
Yeah.
And people forget that grind. But even though I love teaching, there are days where if you met me, you'd be concerned about me, because it doesn't matter. Even if you really like a job, there's always rough and smooth with any career. For me, the primary problem is just work-life balance. I just want a better work-life balance. Essentially, if I was to put it in a statement, I want to do as little work as possible and get paid as much as possible for doing it. That's my goal in life.
Well, look, realistically, that's anybody's goal. And, you know...
Oh, you'd be shocked. You'd be shocked about the people who would disagree with that. Some people are married to their work. They love the grind.
My older brother is older stock, and I remember he was out of work for 8-9 months, and that man was miserable. And it was just because he had nothing to do. It wasn't that he had no money or anything like that. It was just he had nothing to do and it was driving him insane.
That is evolutionary though, isn't it? And I mean, again, I must preface everything I'm about to say. I don't have any medical expertise or psychological training, but it seems intuitively obvious to me that being or not being occupied is very dangerous for your mind. We are hunter-gatherers. We evolved on the savannas of Africa, hunting and gathering, and we proliferated and spread around the earth. But again, we did so by hunting and gathering and just contending with reality. A human being having free time is only a thing of the last maybe 50 years, maybe 100 years at most. And I'm not so sure our brains are evolved to deal with it. I'm convinced personally, and again, don't take this to the bank and cash it because I have no expertise in the area, but I do suspect that free time is responsible, or having too much free time is responsible in part for the immense amount of depression and suicidality that we see in society.
Yeah, well, it definitely can be. Like, my take on that would be like a lack of goals in life. I find humans become shells of themselves if they don't have something to chase, something to pursue.
Yeah, exactly.
You're wandering aimlessly. Probably a big part of why I never get stir crazy or like, you know, depression or anything like that. Even though I am literally sitting at home all day for the most part by myself. Some of them days I'm not doing much of anything because ultimately I have a goal. I have a job. I have YouTube. I'm pursuing that as a creative outlet, and I want to better myself and better the outcome of that. And just having that in your head that you have something to chase, you never feel like you're useless or you're good for nothing or you're not contributing anything to society because you're actually constantly doing something.
The concern I have, and it's not a concern I need to worry about for myself for a very long time, if ever really, but you're obviously incredibly successful and you are going to be doing better financially with each and every new subscriber. The concern I have for you and for people who are successful in general is that there comes a point where you're so successful that you don't actually have to continue doing anything. And it's no surprise to anyone the number of celebrities and wealthy people in general that commit suicide. I mean, in the last few years alone, the singer of Prodigy, the singer of Linkin Park, Chester, the singer Prodigy was Keith, like Robin Williams and like these titans of the entertainment industry. And despite all of their wealth and all of their adoring fans and all of their talent, they can't see fit to continue living.
Yeah.
And I'm convinced, again, I'm open to having my mind changed. I'm an empiricist. I'm going to follow the evidence where it leads. But I'm convinced that the reason for that depression and suicidality is that those people don't actually have to get out of bed in the morning. Yeah. They don't have to.
Well, I actually talked about this in a previous podcast, and I was actually talking about the exact same sentiment. It's about something I do worry about myself. And the thing that was in my mind, the thing I thought about was Bane's quote to Batman. I know we're talking about Batman again. We always fucking do this, me and you.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Bane's quote to Batman: victory has defeated you.
Yes.
And that quote comes to mind because success defeats a lot of people because there's nothing else to reach for. Where do you go beyond I'm super successful? You need to stop and rethink and say, okay, well, what else can I chase? You know, what else do I have a passion for? And like for me...
I'm sorry, but I have to do this. Oh, victory has defeated you. worst impression ever, but that was 4 years of my life. But anyway, sorry, Ducky, that was quite rude of me.
Peace has cost you your strength. Victory has defeated you. But yeah, that's the kind of sentiment. Yeah. So, but like my only answer to that, and God knows I don't even think it's the right answer. Who knows? But it's you need to change what you're chasing and find something that is maybe not as easily achievable. Like for me, something I'd be passionate about is like caring for animals. So I'd hope when the day finally comes where my success and my financial situation allows me to become lazy, I can then use the money or the finances behind me, I can use that money and reinvest it into something that I'd like to give back to the world. So like taking care of animals, do it at an animal shelter or something like that. Have that as my new focus.
Whereas if I get successful, I'm going to invest money and buy stock in McDonald's so that more burgers can be eaten. I'm joking. That's not my plan.
The world needs more burgers, damn it.
I mean, maybe a little bit off topic, but given that care for animals, would you ever consider becoming a vegetarian or a vegan on that?
I have actually played with the idea many times in my head, but like so many people out there, the reason why I haven't done it yet is because I really like meat. I don't like how it's made and what goes into it and the bad treatment of animals and all that. But like, you know, it's a big transition to go from, you know, an omnivore to a vegetarian or a vegan. And it's a big lifestyle change. And, you know, I respect anybody who can do it and has done it. And I probably will do it in the future myself. Right now, it's the idea of it is so daunting.
I'm right there with you, Ducky. I feel exactly the same. I know you are philosophically minded and I am as well. And having looked rather deeply into animal ethics as a topic, I think the argument is over. There's no justification. And look, everything I'm about to say is going to come with an absolutely unquenchable smell of hypocrisy because we have both just admitted to being meat eaters. But I must admit, I can't justify doing it. Now, there's probably people listening right now and they're screaming. They say things... I don't know, oh, well, we need it to be healthy. Well, actually, no, it turns out you don't. Turns out you can get all of the vitamins and minerals you need from naturalistic sources. And at worst, you might need one vitamin tablet. I believe B12 is a vitamin that can't be gotten from plant-based sources. But a simple supplement human ingenuity can solve that problem. But one of my favorite things about this topic is the idea of cloned meat. There's a company in America called Memphis Meats.
Oh, and I think I've heard of this one, all right.
Yeah, they're cloning meat. The problem is right now, one meatball of cloned meat costs $10,000. So a bit above my budget at the moment, Ducky.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, as soon as cloned meat becomes ubiquitous, I think it's just going to be the norm. If I go to Tesco and I go to the meat aisle and there's traditional chicken on the left, cloned chicken on the right, and the cloned chicken, even if it was double the price. So like 5 chicken fillets in Tesco's today probably costs about £5, something like that. If the cloned meat is £10, that's not a massive additional expense, in my opinion, for the sake of having my moral scruples in the right place.
You can have your cake and eat it then. Like.
Exactly. And cloned meat, if people aren't aware about what it is, it doesn't involve the slaughter of an animal at all. They just take some DNA from that animal, like a cheek cell, and they're able to grow that meat in a lab. And what's really interesting to me is when I tell this to people, they say, oh, that's disgusting, which is a really bizarre response because what's actually disgusting is how the animals are treated now.
Yeah, like, it's fucking horrific. It's horrific how animals are treated now. And like, even if it's just a case of grown meat, oh, that sounds disgusting. Like some of the stuff meat-wise that we eat is disgusting if you think about it. Like, first of all, like one thing that comes to my mind, black pudding. It's a big Irish thing, blood sausage, or where it's called elsewhere in the world.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
I completely understand how that sounds disgusting to everyone. I still quite like the flavour of it, but I can understand how that sounds disgusting. Any part of the world. Some parts of the world where they eat like bugs and crickets and it's completely normal to them. It's just getting acclimatized to it is all. It's
just so bizarre to me how people's moral intuitions are in my view, in certain circumstances, just tuned in the complete opposite way they should be. You know, what you should be horrified about is the idea that a chicken spent its entire life in a cage pumped with growth hormone so that it grew to such a size that its legs actually shattered beneath its body.
Yeah.
And then it was de-beaked, which means half its face was sliced off because those beaks have nerve endings, not unlike a duck's beak, if you will, or a person's lips. And then that chicken is eventually yanked from that cage after spending its life in that misery. and then its head is chopped off and it arrives at your local KFC. And it's like, that's what should horrify you, not the idea of, oh, we cloned a cell and so now we grew the meat in a lab. And by the way, because we grew it in a lab, it's not subject to biological contamination like foot and mouth disease, for example. And in addition to that, we can also regulate the protein content so we can make the meat even more healthy.
Yeah.
Like, people's moral intuitions are just insane.
And if you ever take like 5 minutes, now I go out of my way to avoid looking at stuff like this, but I have done in my life, but like stuff with slaughterhouses, and it's just the idea of like slitting an animal's throat while it's alive to drain the blood and fucking just stuff like that. That's horrific, you know.
Yeah,
and especially when you hear like stuff like pigs. Pigs is the one that bothers me especially because, you know, the pigs have shown to have equal as intelligence to that of dogs, and you couldn't imagine doing something like that to a dog. Well, I know they do in parts of China, and it's fucking horrific, but you couldn't imagine like slaughtering a dog like that, a beloved household pet. And, you know, why should we treat different animals differently?
That's where you get into the kind of human supremacy argument. People argue that, well, we just can because that's the food chain. And then what's really one of the most ridiculous arguments, I'm trying to kind of preempt what certain commenters are maybe going to say, but, you know, somebody out there is thinking right now, but, you know, lions eat gazelle and I don't know, shark eat smaller fish, and so humans eat animals too. It's just the natural way. Yeah, but, you know, lions also fuck each other without consent.
Well, I was just going to say, because animals can't interpret cruelty like humans can. They can't understand
exactly,
that.
but I mean, like, the concept of consent doesn't exist in the animal kingdom. The lion doesn't ask the lioness, can I hop on? The lion just hops on. So it seems to me, if you're going to use the animal kingdom as your justification for what we do to animals, well, you can't just cherry pick. You got to take the rough with the smooth. So if you want to model human behavior in the animal kingdom, well, then I'm sorry, that means rape is permissible. That means murder is permissible. That means a whole load of really horrendous examples of animal behavior now become permissible as well. You don't just get to appeal to the fact that animals eat other animals and then ignore all the other stuff that's inconvenient for your argument, you know?
Yeah. Appeal to the part that makes us different to other animals.
Anyway, this conversation has made me hungry. Do you fancy going to McDonald's?
Just I'd savage a quarter pounder.
Again, I have to mention that because we are such hypocrites right now, and, you know, people are going to just absolutely laugh themselves to sleep listening to us complaining about animal cruelty whilst admitting that we're both meat eaters.
Nobody wakes up a vegetarian or a vegan. You know, there needs to be a conversation with yourself, and I feel like that's where we kind of sitting right now, where we've played with the idea and we can't think of any good reason not to be. Yeah,
and you know, actually, can I throw it open to your listeners? If there are listeners, and no doubt are, because it's such a large audience size, if there are listeners out there who are vegans and vegetarians, and they have advice for Ducky and I about how to make that transition to veganism or vegetarianism an easier transition, please comment below and let me know, because as you can hear, I think quite obviously ringing through here, Ducky and I are more than interested in making that transition. We're just not so sure how to do it when we've been raised on meat. We have that taste for meat that's very hard to just break away from, especially then when you, or at least in my case, I work full time, but I mean, you're very busy with your YouTube channel, Ducky. We want something that's unrealistic. We want an easy path. We want an easy path to vegetarianism.
Can you do it for us? You don't want to do it at all.
Is there any Big Mac flavoured carrots available?
You know what's worse? Like, I'm like, meat is so ingrained in my diet.
Same.
And what's more, I start getting like miniature panic attacks if I've had a meal that didn't have meat in it, because then I feel like I hadn't eaten. You know. Like, I give my missus shit because she loves a pizza that has just cheese, and I'm just like, what the fuck? That's a pizza base is what you're getting. Where's the toppings? Where's the meat?
Soon as they release KFC flavoured cucumber, we'll be sorted.
Oh, stop. Be fucking deep throating them like any porn star, but
oh, absolutely. Sign me up. KFC gravy is just heaven. That's God's food. If there is a God dips his chicken in KFC gravy.
It's a weird thing to die and go to heaven, and God is just like, why weren't you worshipping KFC? That was my house. That was my house of worship. I
put a KFC in every bloody town and you guys didn't pay attention.
Why would I make my house of worship a place with wooden seats? I know, I'd make it comfortable with nice food.
Turns out the colonel is just Jesus with the beard chopped up.
A hipster Jesus.
Oh, that's so funny.
Oh, stop.
We do get to the strangest of places.
We do.
Ducky.
I think we should wrap this up. We're going for long enough anyway. So I think we're going to bring it to a close so we can get back to our lives.
Yeah, thanks. I'm beginning to lose the will to live here. I was wondering if you were ever going to leave me alone. leave me go. Somebody help. I feel like Batman. I feel like Batman in Bane's prison and you're just sitting over me. Your punishment must be more severe.
But fucking, what I will say for the audience as well, pre this podcast, myself and Dara had actually a wonderful conversation where we were talking about religion and what else did we get onto? Religion,
we spoke about skepticism, we spoke about comedy and magic and the propensity for them to be misunderstood, a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah, we spoke an awful lot about that before this podcast actually started, so much so that I think I'm going to release that as a separate episode after this one. So if you want to hear more of myself and Dara chatting in a more relaxed environment where we're not just talking about strictly magic, we're talking about other things that may interest you, I'm going to upload that in a few days from whenever this goes out. Feel free to check that out. And in the meantime, if you enjoyed what Dara has to say, if you enjoyed him as a person and would like to see more of him, he's his own channel. It's called Magic Dara. I'll leave a link in the description. You can go check that out, as well as a link on the end screen. Do please go check him out. We're trying to get him to 1,000 subscribers within the release of these 2 episodes, and help him out, get him started on YouTube. And
on that note, Ducky, can I just say thanks very much for having me on, and not once but twice. So I got the double D today, which I'm very pleased about.
The double penetration.
But on that note, we've spoken about some fascinating topics in both podcasts. We've gone from everything from veganism, vegetarianism, to skepticism, to philosophy. We've covered a whole lot. And I just want to throw out a question to your listeners so that I can get some feedback, if that's okay.
Yeah, fire away, lad.
I'm currently running, concurrently, 3 separate shows on my YouTube channel. And those are Dara's Magic School, Dara's Magic Moments, and Dara's Street Deceptions. But I'm spending a good deal of time thinking about a new show which is going to be called A Magician's Thoughts On. And I'm thinking about delving into all of these other topics, these philosophical topics, social issues. And I just want to put out some feelers just to get a sense of your audience. If you liked what we spoke about here, if you want to hear more of that, could you let me know? Maybe comment in my channel or comment on below this podcast. I just want to get a sense if there would actually be interest in that. Would you be interested in knowing a magician's view on, say, psychics, or a magician's view on vegetarianism, or whatever the topic might be? It could be a different topic every week. I just want to put out some feelers. I'm not committing to the idea. I just want to know if there's any appetite there for it, basically. So I hope you don't mind me asking your audience that question, Ducky. But to bring it full circle again, thanks for having me on, Ducky. You're not only an amazing content creator, but you're a good mate, and I'd love to do this again sometime.
Yeah, absolutely, lad. It's been fun. I'm sure the audience have enjoyed your company as well.
Fingers crossed.
Well, if not, they'll say that they did because they're polite like that. So,
That's no good to me. That's no good to me. If you didn't like me, tell me that you fucking hated me in the comments. Just be honest. Be honest. I have no use. I have no use for dishonesty. He's a man of science and
practicality. Yeah,
yes.
Just give me the damn truth and be done with it.
If I'm universally hated, I shall doff my cap and retreat back into the wilderness, and you'll never hear from me again.
Yeah, so the next podcast, I'll be like, yeah, he's not even my friend anymore. I've unfriended him.
Oh God.
His missus has even moved on. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I'm just a broken man. I end up doing tricks for $1 on the side street, and
you just get out of magic altogether and become like a sad clown.
That reminds me actually of Pennywise the clown. Yeah. They all flow down here. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Right. So
the references are never ending.
No, they're really not. And this is us dumbing them down. Like, when we get going, we don't stop. I don't even think we possess personalities. I think we just possess movie quotes.
There would be many more references if this weren't going out to a general audience. So I apologize in advance if you're shaking your eyes and your head wondering when we're going to shut up.
Right, I'm just going to leave this one here. All the links and everything you need is in the description below. Thanks everybody for listening. I do appreciate it. And I will catch you lads and ladies in the next one.
Bye everyone.